Okay, I will call the meeting to order. Federation of State County Municipal Employees, 11/24. This meeting for May 27th, 2012. At City Hall here in Lewiston, Idaho, and just for those maybe at home now or later, this is a public meeting. Next order of business is some comments. I don't see any citizens here. So what I would like to ask, or if you could have your guest introduce himself to the rest of the team here, if they, I don't know if they had the, I don't think you know.
They weren't here yet.
This is James Tree, I am the general counsel for AFSCME, and I'm just here to assist Laura on the bargaining team today. I'm here as a lawyer, not as an attorney. I've not been in practice in the state of Idaho, just to get that out there. But I see you, Mr. Mayor, and everybody else, so hopefully get a contract done.
Bye. We're going on it. Well, welcome. Next, we'll move to our active. Roman numeral 3A, American Federation of State County Municipal Employees Local 11/24, bargaining agreement negotiations. This is a continuation from our last meeting, and in past meetings, I'm gonna have to reflect now to make Leah to quite honestly tell us where we're at, because it's online for me right now.
I believe when we left last time, kind of reviewing what we had submitted, and we ran out of time, so if you to go through your guys' comments.
First, did you get access to those videos?
I got the first 3
Sharing
Done.
with you right now.
but the YouTube, I don't know, I could try to copy it to Chrome, and then it doesn't copy the ad. It doesn't, I don't know. The Google Docs one started working, but I didn't get the last 2 sessions. So I have on my computer knowledge.
I think those 4 that I sent you were the only ones that we've seen at least download.
Yeah, 5 was last week and I was stepping out, so I haven't been able to send it to anybody.
I wasn't able to get for 5, but I know you had sent an email with some additional ones, and maybe it was the YouTube one. It was weird because I did get the YouTube to work, and I was like, oh, that one I already downloaded. Let's do the others, and it just stopped working. It's like
Playing around with it because IT and our public outreach are doing 2 different things at the same time.
Are these posted on the website?
No.
Or not?
They're in a shared YouTube with all of us and council.
I'm not sure though if it's a shared YouTube, since it's the city's server or network, if that transfers over.
No, I sent you a message today. So if you have a Google account, you'll automatically have a YouTube account. That Google email would need to know what that email is.
Okay.
If you don't have a Google email, then you need to create a YouTube account associated with this email so that you can access that subscription.
Nikki, do we want these out on the city website?
No.
Because why?
Well, right now it's only accessible to us versus accessible to anybody to use in any way that they want. So I thought it would be better to have it just with our team. That way it's not shared on social media, not unless you want it to be. Just people don't make
Okay,
good choices.
well, I'll think about it.
Well, you guys, we had talked about a pay scale, so I don't know if you have anything to provide on that forefront. We did, I don't think we got our concerns regarding the information with seniority. Maybe providing a better definition of seniority, and if an employee leaves back, does that change seniority? And of course, more about the call out holiday and scheduled versus unscheduled, which is a bigger conversation. And then, our team wasn't comfortable with the COLA language. We have several times that across union groups and across, we've stuck to the 1% to 2.5%. Of course, this year we're anticipating a 2.5%. About the pay increase that you guys have provided, because, you know, when you do the math, it's a pretty significant increase. COLA anywhere from 5 to 50%. So that would have to be reconsidered on your guys' part. We haven't talked about it thoroughly, but we would like to talk more about longevity pay. Because as you guys are trying to create fairness amongst employee groups. And then, you know, we discussed needing to define cause, needing more discussion on our part. Whether we agree to the disciplinary process and language. The city has a process already, which is much more thorough. And so our discussion on whether that was something we would consider, or just leaving the disciplinary process as it is right now, which is being utilized and makes sense and goes through a progressive discipline process. So if you want to take the topics and start.
I'll start with the COLA. Our recommendation simply came from the 2% that was recommended to the council and mayor for the 3 years. So we just thought we'd match that. The rule of fairness, or the type of fairness, so.
Well, yours was 2.5% the first year, but then changing it to 2.5, 5% for the two previous.
No, we asked for 2.5 for 3 years. Just the way the council had been recommended. That was our last vote.
So you're comfortable with the 1 to 2.5%?
No, right.
You want 2.5 each year,
2.5%
yeah,
each
just
year.
this flat 2.5.
That was not what, that wasn't part of the recommendation.
Bob, what you said. That's the last.
Than 2.5% in arrears to get the pay for next year. So he was looking backwards because council doesn't, they only update, not completely. Yeah, I mean, that was a recommendation, because one, I think it's important to understand that council thought that happened is there's some state law and city code that drives that conversation. So council can only set or even read their wages every 2 years, is it? There's a change in council, so for us, it's every 2 years. And then our city code, and maybe even some that's driven by state code, you have to have a compensation review committee that makes a recommendation. Whether council takes action on it or not is yet to be seen. But they were looking at, it's been 2 years since they've left, so what's happened in the last 2 years? So they were looking at what COLA the last 2 years.
Well, and city council makes significant less money, correct? So that 2.5%.
That's true, but they were also looking at the mayor's pay as well.
Oh,
Which isn't necessary for this mayor at council, or required by law for the incoming council.
Totally understood, totally understood. And our guidelines just came because we've gone back and forth, like, okay, well, here's our proposal. Percentage sounds like a 2.5% cost of living here, which, I mean, to us is pretty realistic. If anybody's gonna stay realistic, and we're just like, well, okay, yeah, perfect sense for the council. I mean, it's a demanding part-time job, there's no doubt about it. So that's where our proposal came.
Yeah, looking at arrears, because they can't put in there, I don't even think, could they even set a future COLA, because they're only allowed to modify it every 2 years. Every time there's a new turning of council.
So if city council's looking at arrears to make up for that, then when we present our CPI and the comparison over the years of how it adds up to what the actual CPI was. To make up that, what the employees, with having that cap of the CPI on there, limits them. Not a same argument as the employee group.
I think that you might be looking at a market, not COLA.
The COLAs are gonna be tricky. And, part of what that compensation review committee has to do is they have to set the compensation by ordinance, and so they have to kind of project them, they have to say that something, they don't have to put a goal on there, they can just put a dollar amount. Because it's a look forward, everything else is a look back. So when council goes to set by contract the salaries for the next contract period, if we weren't sitting here today, it would be based on the CPI from the previous January, February, March. And he calculates that, so it's a look backwards at what it was, no more than 2.5, no less than 1, and that's applied October 1 for the next year. So again, in the next year, you have to look back. And what council was trying to do, or the compensation review committee was, and we have not finalized that, we still have to take that back. But they were trying to be creative, I think. I put that language in there, it might be unnecessarily complicated, no, but council's gonna have another shot at looking at that. That was the initial report that they gave to us. But I think probably one of the differences is where they're required by state statute to set that by ordinance. And so, I know Jennifer's gonna look at that, you know, I have some thoughts on it too, on the recommendation on how they did that. But it can't be adjusted if inflation goes up or down from there. It's set. It's really not harm control that portion of it, once it's adopted, it's adopted.
I did the math on the current last 4 years of the first quarter, which is what we base, right? I mean, that's what we base our
First 3 months,
First
the
3
average
months.
of the first 3
first
months.
quarter. So in the last 4 years, that is averaging out to 5.02%. So even if we went on the high side, looking toward the future, 2.5%, still much less than what the average is for the last 4 years. It's the top of our scale, our perceived scale here. But it's just barely cutting that average in half. So, 2.5% seemed like our upper limit, so we just decided that if we could nail that for 3 years, chances are that average in the next 3 years is not ever going to dip below 2.5%. We don't know that. 3 years ago, we sat here and tried to predict the future and it didn't work.
I guess then, so our proposal for clarification, is there anything that can be agreed to? Is it all no's, or are we waiting for the city to review?
And the COLAs,
Or just, I guess, on our whole proposal, because the only thing I have or note that we've agreed on is a food allowance increase. So,
I think the COLAs are pretty well set until council decides to change it. If we want. So we spent a lot of time, you know, looking at the numbers, but, it's gonna come down to council happening in the public meeting, that's where you're gonna hear their discussion on it. And, I'm sure, they will be told that, everyone in the city has the same full of language. And if they would like to change it for this employee group, they can do that, but I just don't foresee them doing that, so I need to be realistic about it. You're certainly welcome to pursue it, but, I just don't see them changing that policy, as I understand it.
Well, we didn't necessarily say no to the seniority language, we just, it needs better information.
yes, I just know I put it in there because in one of my notes, I know we had kind of briefly touched that, and I didn't know if we needed to define it, if there was a difference. For the part, you know, seniority with the city, and if you leave for, you know, of course, a layoff or something like that, and you're recalled back under a certain time period, I would think we would agree to, then that seniority should count from the previous years, so,
Yeah, I don't think we have a preference on how you guys want seniority.
okay,
We just need to know what language you guys want.
okay.
And I think the personnel policy does address seniority, so you could look and see what that language is.
Well, and it doesn't really seem like seniority is really reflected for much in here, but maybe like internally, do you guys use it, like for vacation requests? I mean, are those like department process?
They all used to talk about our vacation pretty much, but I don't know how they do it in the streets.
So I don't know what seniority means to you guys, I guess,
Yeah,
other than there was a layoff.
yeah, they,
But if there was a layoff or reduction in force,
I guess if we had the.
do we define? Like, we had an employee leave and come back,
Right.
right? And there was like a 3-year gap. Do those 3 years, does it start over? Is it
I feel it.
all in,
If you.
all years added up?
You leave voluntarily.
should just-
I mean, I'll be honest, we haven't really had this discussion. I think Chris and I have had it, but if you leave voluntarily for something different and you decide, hey, I wanna go back to what I'm doing, then seniority is out the window.
Okay, it starts over. So I think knowing that,
Yeah,
written out like that, so that we would know that should that ever happen, what that means,
Right.
and we're not at a question mark of like.
But-
Cause we've had several people in
Yeah.
your union who have left and come back.
right,
So.
right. And so, like, if you got laid off,
mhm.
you know, then you get called back. But usually you're gonna be the lowest guy anyway, so it's not gonna affect a whole lot, but still, I mean. I think the big thing is like Ransom, it's not as a group, we feel the same way. If you choose to leave a job. Then. I mean, you say, okay, I didn't like this career I just chose, I wanna come back. It's not fair to the other guys that have stayed with the city for you to just jump back ahead of them.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just, it's your contract and what
Right.
language do you want to define
So,
it as?
okay, yeah, so something,
So, yeah.
yeah, we can work on. Yeah.
What about if they transfer to a different department?
I think
That's
that's
a whole
fair.
other, that's a whole other issue, but it does, that plays in the seniority role.
So that needs to be incorporated
Right.
into it too, because that's,
We're not leaving the city. we're
Yeah.
Transferring within,
well, cause I think for, at least for myself, it's better if it's defined. So if the situation happens, we're not at a this and that, or it was read this way or meant to be this way.
We'll,
It's like, we know in this circumstance, this is what.
we'll get there.
and is, so, I can't remember, tell me if I'm wrong, is it in the personnel policy or is it in our contract? That you can lose seniority for discipline?
I think it's in your
Yeah,
contract.
Not in. Policy, but pretty sure you can, if you get,
Mhm.
you can lose it for discipline. Reasons, like, you didn't lose your job, but you got disciplined, then.
Yeah,
What you're talking about, if somebody leaves employment at the city, excuse me, and then comes back later, they're rehired, that
I don't think if you leave willingly for like 3 years and you come back, you shouldn't get your seniority back.
you know, I would argue if anyone just leaves, period.
Right,
So
okay,
I have to sign a
Period.
status change form when
Yes.
somebody leaves the city.
Yeah.
And it says eligible for rehire, yes or no, and if it says yes, it's eligible, then I sign that.
Yeah.
So then if you decide next week you wanna come back to the city, you're eligible, we have to have a position for you, but let's say you get hired 3 months later,
Mhm.
I don't think you should presume that you then go back to the top.
I agree.
Because I can give you my own experiences from that, like, just like even from a legislative standpoint, if I leave for 1 session and come back, I lose all my seniority.
Right.
Doesn't matter how many years.
I agree. If you leave for a different job, no matter if it's 24 hours, then you gotta change your heart, but you know, it's like, you should not get your seniority back if you chose to leave the city.
I think that's reasonable.
That's the way I feel and Ryan
It happened to
does.
me. It's the reality.
And
Asked for my old job, they wanted me back and, oh, but you're gonna start down here until the second chart. And I didn't ask, I'm just like, yeah, I don't really wanna do that again, so
me,
here I am listed.
it seems hard enough for the city to trust and take me back, even knowing that you might just decide to leave again, so. You get rehired,
I think we can just clean up the language
Yeah.
in here.
we can do
Not a
that.
big deal, because most of it is where we stand. City seniority, regardless of department, is for your length of employment at the city. Department seniority is a length at employment at that department.
Yeah.
Now, we might want to change that if the city chooses to move somebody to a different, not for disciplinary reasons,
Okay,
person would take seniority with them. That's hard, we have to come up with some language.
do you want, yeah,
I don't think the city would just move somebody, for the.
Is it
Yeah.
playing somebody up? They might very well move somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
But that person shouldn't have to go in with
No, no,
20
no,
years of
sure.
service and be
No.
struggling to get a vacation. You know,
there have been times where we've moved.
Yeah, we've had.
please move me
people out of
before you
state.
lay me off.
Well, we've moved people rather than like, permanently or rather than lay people off or.
Right, yeah, so if you have,
Well, and a disciplinary would be a completely different than involuntary
Yeah,
transfers, if you will. And that goes along with probation, how it used to read, people who are forced to go someplace, I should be put on probation versus, yeah, I wanna go to parks.
where you got this right.
So,
okay.
I think we can clean this up
Yeah.
with going.
Yeah, I think you guys just tell us how you wanna,
Okay.
and address those
Okay, we got it.
nuances.
You need right, you guys, so you got it.
But there are some big ones, but we'll get.
Yeah.
There.
And then, like I said, we haven't had a chance to talk about longevity pay, but, you know, the initial discussion was if we were going to consider that, again, is that something that we would want to or be able to do for all employees, you know?
And
And then you guys were gonna work on a pay scale. I don't know if you were able to do that.
well, I don't know what, where you start, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
so I know you had said something about you guys idea of moving,
Positions.
not just, okay, just positions, it's not moving everybody up this pay scale.
No, I mean, some of the things that the mayor and I had talked about, was like the issue with streets and traffic and the issue that we have with custodians who are pretty low, right? And the park maintenance labor. So, you know, maybe moving those positions rather than the whole scale.
It sounds like right now we're having, basically every department's having trouble hiring.
Not really. I mean, we've got a number of wastewater collection. I don't know about water treatment. I have.
No,
just.
but I mean, yeah, there
Yeah.
it is, but, well, how do I say this? I don't know, try to put it nicely, you know, like people that are qualified for the position, I should say. You know, you have 100 applicants and nobody qualifies,
Quality.
they could all be. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I was
We
just
got 12
responding
so far.
to,
We've qualified.
I mean, I was just responding to Pat's
Right, no, I
concern,
understand, I'm just
saying
saying,
that's something we might be able to work with.
just in a whole, it seems like we're having a hard time finding qualified applicants, I guess that's what I want.
Yeah, because if it's a over 2.5%, we could move the whole scale 2.5%. But then in addition, maybe consider moving positions, a couple of them.
I did. I had that, when all that worked on it.
I know a few meetings ago, you guys had talked about presenting a wage scale to us, of what you thought. Do you guys have that prepared?
Mayor, I'm gonna look at you.
What's that?
She's asking if we have a wage scale prepared.
So, the wage scale that we have, prepared, that we, looked at taking the current, positions and increasing those, 1%, 2.5%.
Well, we did like 3 versions. So we looked at applying the 2.5% clip. And then moving custodian, park maintenance,
What's the
labor.
first one we did? Was 2.5 plus 1, right? Think,
No, the first one was just the 2.5. Plus moving a couple positions.
okay.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
I thought we had one where we did an inflation, and the next one, it was, we moved to certain positions. Right, are those the two options? But the idea was, first of all, I think we all recognize that the positions that AFSCME represent are diverse. And they're all across the state. So it's hard to do the math and say, well, let's give everybody 2.5%, and is that equitable enough? It kind of gets back to some of what Brian was, or Chris was talking about, you know, where you say, well, if somebody makes 100,000, you give them a 2%, and someone makes 30,000, gives 2%. It's like 30,000. Well, the person has to buy groceries just like the $100,000 person. And so the second option there, where we look at trying to move some positions up, and it's just a what if game, what's it look like? Some positions, for example, custodians, we moved them up a grade. Okay, well, that has financial impact, so whatever that dollar amount is. And then we took, was it streets tax? That we moved up a grade, okay, that has a financial impact. And so we did that with those two groups, and was there one other one?
Electrician,
Electrician.
removing them from being facilities maintenance tech and putting them on their own grade.
On that pay scale, all in the traffic.
Yeah, it was
So by doing
custodian.
that, that has an impact. Financial impact of, I think, 150-ish, something like that. If you, right. And then the other way is to just leave everybody in the grades that they're at, and just doing to the pay. So this kind of gets back to, and what Chris was saying, well, okay, that's not, but some people are kind of not getting benefited as much. And so we ran those two scenarios, and the difference between the two scenarios was $20,000 to $30,000. And those are the only two that I remember. Nikki, what was the third?
Yeah, COLA plus 1% market adjustment with no moves. One was, COLA adjustment and moving those specific positions. Which again would be custodian, park maintenance, laborer, street technician, traffic technician, and electrician.
And what was the total impact on the bottom?
I think. I wanna say it was like 160,000. It was between 138 and 160.
So that was our attempt to start playing with that pay scale and kind of do a sensitivity analysis, you know, how does it respond to changes? What's the impact, the budget impact? But
And I think that 1% was based on the COLA link, like the COLA that you, or it was like, well, the COLA received was 1.97. You're saying 2.83, that's less than 1%. So if you do the adjustment. 1%.
Well, those are two options that we looked at. And I need to gone through with Nikki. I was gone last week for 2 days, but I'd have to go back to and firm this up with Nikki if that's something you want to look at, but that's what we did. And that's why I'm asking if you have one too.
Yeah, but we had the proposal, right? But
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little lost of kind of where we are, like we presented, and it sounds like you want us to represent something again without saying, yes, we agree to this, or no. So like, what's our direction? Like,
The direction was we provided you the pay scale so that you could give us with a pay scale that wasn't the 4%, 3%, and 2%. Dollars, yeah.
or that's, I think we all understood it as you guys were gonna have something for us, so that we something to go off of when we redid our.
Yeah, I mean, the last meeting I understood that Laura had requested the pay. We sent it to you and that you guys were going to come back with a different proposal, understanding that the $4 and $2 wasn't something that the city was able to provide.
I've been working on stuff at work, but
Yeah.
like I said, the way I understood it, I could have, I'm not saying I didn't, is that you guys would have something kind of this time, and we'd be able to see it and kind of see what we're. You know, since, I don't,
We can print those off. I mean, there's nothing top secret about
that would
it.
help us kind of, you know, so we're not, you know, come totally out of line again.
You want me to go print them, Nikki?
Maybe
Yeah, I can print them.
we could probably take a copy.
To,
yeah, do you wanna take a copy? Do Do you wanna take a caucus so we can go print
I
them?
have a problem.
Oh.
That's just.
I think we need to talk those once we get those.
Well, I think what Nikki's trying to do as far as some of the other stuff is, yeah, you said you wanted to talk about seniority, but we're not clear on what we're actually asking for, so you need to provide those additional details so that we can accurately assess your proposal.
Okay.
She explained that earlier, but
Well, I know, but if you're, where we're at moving forward, based on the proposal you submitted, there's multiple aspects that
right,
you need to readdress so that we can
right, which way I can understand.
So I think, that we can get you copies of these spreadsheets so that it's easy to like manipulate it.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that you do not have right there.
I guess with that wage scale or the way talk is. My impression of it is there's a dollar amount the city doesn't want to adjust that wage scale.
I could see why you would feel that or think that.
Mhm.
I had that conversation. Yeah.
Okay.
That's logical.
Well, I just,
And I'm
you know,
not
I
there.
know we tried to, like I had asked about doing comps and I haven't, I haven't heard really. Other than like, we know the electrician's low paid and bumping it up, but like, there's no comps to support that.
No.
It's our impression, I guess.
Why don't you do the comps yourself
I'm
and then
working on it.
present that to us?
I'm working on it, but I told her I misunderstood the timeline.
So in the last meeting, I have tried to do comps. In Idaho, it is hard to get information from anything.
I mean, you might have to submit a public record request, but wages is a public
Okay.
record.
We have that handled now, we take care of it.
The, Idaho, all the wages are,
Right.
like, you guys, your name on the state of Idaho's website.
That's
what
not
your salary
transparent.
is.
Yep.
You have that link, Chris?
Uh,
Do you have that link?
I did, yeah. Are you asking for me or you?
Well, for you,
Oh,
sometimes it's
sorry.
tricky to
That's
find.
like- that's-
Maybe it's tricky for me to find because I have to go
It
into a
is tricky,
different
no.
portal. to
Wait,
submit data.
Oh,
But, so then I always have a struggle to find the true public
it's
side.
not the website and we gotta get this for sure, figured that out right away.
It's nice to export into Excel.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. Oh, but it's just, there's more, I mean, it'd be easy, but there's just, you're just looking at, say, streets, parks, water, everybody,
The variety of
Different,
job
you know.
descriptions, yeah.
like I said, some people, most people don't do cert pay for water, wastewater jobs, they do. If you have a one, if you have a two, if you have a three, or you have a four, it's paid by license, not cert pay. So it's a different. Because. That's,
That's a different.
yeah.
Amy, do we know, looking across all of the AFSCME representative positions, do we know, for example, what a 1% increase in salary means? Did we calculate that?
I don't know if that was part of what you looked at. I wasn't involved in that. Work on putting that together.
Probably just.
Fine, it's a volume. It'll let you know where
Well,
it's
we have
at.
our 26 budget built already, so we could just
Believe me, I had you
work
before.
off that. Then you don't have to look at. Cause those already have step increases and COLA factored into them.
I did
So
that.
it
when we
would,
went
you
down
could
to
just
that.
those. And on just that additional cost.
Yeah. I just flew to their city truck, one of the guys parked it somewhere, I
What
would
is-
use it.
Yeah,
Get
so
something to eat.
there's all this stuff.
I didn't know where they are.
It's a COLA.
So that's about.
Because everything is updated procedures, the only thing it doesn't have insurance. Because it hasn't been about. So I have Carolyn working on a scenario, so I can just include if I need.
I'm off. This day's all tough, but. not all. daughter's closing on her house tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah. You get to, my volunteer is to paint. Awesome. It's very much. I'm sure we know we're painting our house already too, so that's something that. Oh, well. You're always still doing stuff for him. Yeah.
Amy's looked at these, but
I didn't know if you had a myself on that.
yeah, I shared it with everybody. This is option A and we just have an option.
It doesn't have the dollar amount.
No, I have that on my computer though.
Scale.
This is just the pay scale for them to consider. So there's option B.
Label on the top of option.
Oh, are they? Oh,
Yeah.
I remember it again.
But it is a little small.
Thank you.
Well, you know,
Thank you. Hey,
okay, so this taking issues. We put it in an Excel spreadsheet and you can see right here in the upper right hand corner, 1.035. It's inflator, so everything in those cells is inflated by 3.5%. Okay, from current. So it shows that the 2.5 COLA plus 1% like the 10/1/25 to 9/30/26, and also notice to the left of that says the word draft. But this is in the draft, and I'll part two because I would not tell you that there is not an error somewhere in that spreadsheet, like the spreadsheets can have, but I think it's ridiculous. Our discussions here, then option B, again, these were, Nikki and I worked on putting these together in, Leah, and so, option B, what we did, as you can see, that the custodial park maintenance goes from 510 to 511. So this kind of hits a little bit on what Chris is talking about, and I'm trying to, in the lower end of the scale. And then the street maintenance, traffic services, utility locate. Utility locate's not been moved.
No, stormwater and heat locate were met.
Okay. I have a question.
Mhm.
But streets, and traffic. Said it. Removed to 516. And,
And then, the
Electrician.
electrician would go to 517.
went from where to where?
Went from 1617.
516 to 517.
And I think there's a 7%, did we calculate 7% difference between?
I think so. I think that's how it's built.
As was the cross connection specialist that really is not even.
Yeah, we
Job.
No. And my understanding from the department with the new position is it's administrative in nature, it's not,
I don't know exactly.
I talked to the director, that's what I know.
So I had a long meeting with Brian about that, and he told me that, it is, it's not a tech position, and it's intended to be management, it's got a lot of management type stuff, and there's more coming. But I did ask him about that today, and that's not a very good answer for you. I did
Yeah,
ask him.
we just talked to him also. He said it was, kind of. Pursuit, that's not, what we understand, that's fine.
Yeah, like I said, I talked to Dustin Johnson too, and it's meant to be more administrative than field work.
Okay, so let's look at the lower right-hand corner. And you see on option A that the lower right-hand corner, the number there says 79,446,73. And then on option B, the lower right-hand corner, 78619.13. Can you see the difference? Do you see that, Chris?
I think,
Okay.
Yeah.
So what option B does is instead of rewarding the high earners over here on option A, we take some of that salary increase and we redistribute it to other positions, which is the custodial and traffic, for example, is moved up a grade. So the total impact of the city is going to be a little bit less under option B, but it gets to some of the concerns that you had raised, Chris and others, about, trying to pick up the bottom a little bit. So this was just a start that Nikki and I were working on, and we found a couple areas which we went through this, but I think most of them have been corrected. So that's what these two options represent. They are draft and they're working documents.
well, and I guess when not to disregard this, but I was. I think we were comparing, say, a $50,000 to $100,000 employee, the major impact that would have. And compared to say a 55 and a 60,000, but that was more my comparison. We're talking about COLA for everyone, for the whole city, and trying to make a weight adjustment to bring some of these jobs, up compared to what everybody, the upper echelon, I guess you might call it. I'm not sure what you might call it, but it's.
Okay, well, we can certainly continue to talk about that, but again, looking at option A and option B, if you look at 510, grade 510 on option A, and look at step 10 as an example, 46,238. They top out that personnel under option B would top out at 48,997. So in addition to getting the COLA to get a position movement that in the end is going to result in a higher top end for them, and that would be the same for the traffic and maintenance on these schedules. And so this is as far as we got, moving things around and, saying, what does that do? So to kind of get to your question about, not exceeding a certain amount or dollar amount or the percentage increase, certainly that's in the back of my mind, as we look at this. But I think part of our attempt is to play with this and ask what if questions if we move things around and say, okay, can we help out here? Can we do that? So that's as far as we got.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
appreciate that.
do you have that broke down into like what just the 2% COLA cost is, 2.5% COLA cost is? And you also have that information for the non-represented, what the cost is?
We didn't have to calculate that. Did you have it for, I think I have it for you.
What's your question, Chris?
So just, okay, we're gonna get 2.5 COLA in October. I was just wondering what that amount was,
Oh,
just for that part of it, just compared to the other. The 1% across the board.
do you have the spreadsheet pulled up, Lee or Nikki? Did you just change the upper right-hand number to 1 point?
Well, they're asking just the 2.5% COLA.
So in the upper right-hand corner, if you change that 1.035 to 1.025.
Well, we
I
already
can do it on our.
Well,
So that's already done.
No,
That's already, but he wants some math. Awesome.
Yeah,
he wants just the
Just-
2.5%.
if everybody took money at 2.5%,
I think I have.
Well, the
it.
dollar impact.
thank you, the
Yes.
dollar impact.
I have it, but I didn't do it. I don't think I could pay. Donation.
Yeah, I don't. think you
I have the
adjust
scale, but I
COLA.
didn't do a pay adjustment, like what the difference would be.
You have a total.
I know what you're saying. You want the just the
Yeah.
2.5%. I hear you, Chris.
Okay, you got me?
I got
Payroll
you.
number?
I don't know how to pull it up, cause I can't just pull up, like the
Yeah.
budget, because you guys aren't one department, right? You're,
I'm asking citywide,
oh,
like a monthly payroll cost. Just add 2.5%.
Or like a 2.5, like 2.5 fee for
like when we did the pay calculations, we took into account
Let me look
who's
up.
receiving a step increase from now till 10/1.
Right.
So there's more elements
Oh, I get it.
within that
That's-
calculation
it's
that
that, I
that's
know.
2.5% as of today.
Okay,
Right.
Does that
You
make
did-
sense?
Yes.
do the 2.5%. Just say. I can probably do it myself.
Well, I have the scale, I just don't have what the difference between
Yeah,
24 to 25 is. Does that make sense? Is that what you're asking for, is just what the difference is?
yeah,
Just-
so, yeah, if
Yeah.
everything was like it is today. But we say today you got the cold today, what it would be, just for cold.
Yeah, I only did the scale, I didn't do the difference between last year to this year. I just only have the difference in the scale, if that makes sense. We only did the actual pay, like individually looked at each and every one of you.
Yeah,
We only did that on the two. Offered. There's quite a few people who, not quite a few, but there are several people that get step increased.
that's fine.
And it's even harder to give them a step increase at Colette and then put them in the new scale.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, like.
Great, where you did it for
We
years.
calculate our 26 budget, but like I couldn't tell you because it's got all those things blended into it. Plus, I'd have to go pull out all the union people from the various departments, but. And it's also got any turnover. Those hard number to count.
This is the number for your 3.5.
Does it have step increases built in
Yeah.
there now? Yeah. Anybody who's highlighted as a step increase.
Yeah, but so we know it would be less than that.
I know, the mayor said the number, I can't remember what he did, 100 and,
Well, this one we've got, like with the 3.5%, it's 167,000. That's granted in all of
107.
167,
Oh, sorry.
308. If,
I know, that's extreme.
just like I was using the mouse. to
So that's
control my-
just 3.5.
So that's what the 2.5
So
and a
you can
1,
divide that by 3.5. To get your
a close
1%
ish.
ish estimate.
I got 167 for it, so you know.
Oh,
0.35.
65.
107. Did I do that one?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
So you want to take minus 2.5%? Oh, no, because I need just something. Or minus 1%?
I guess I got 65,000.
Would you multiply it by?
I thought you just would want to take this number and minus 1%. So it's only 2.5%. Or that not? No, but it's taking 1% of that. That's
But they'll give the cost per each percent, and then that's just the way,
that's serious.
not your benefit cost either.
Well, this is why, like, it takes so much
I
preparation.
think it'd be around 65,000.
It would have been nice.
Oh, well, we have this total though. Is that how you got that?
So this minus that equals that.
Oh, okay.
You gotta take X minus Z. Here's Y.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
You have to.
Alright, can we stop this?
We can try to figure this out.
Okay. I know he was saying there's that number with 3.5, and then there's the number for option, whatever, the option A or option. This 3.5 option,
A.
A.
I think.
Are they using?
2.5 plus 1%.
So that would be, this would be option
It's at the top.
A.
Great, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just-
I got it down here now too, okay? Good.
I'm gonna-
So what's the cost difference for, what's the cost difference for that option? Sorry.
And that's the COLA plus movement.
Yeah.
I hope we're.
147.
Hey, we're going to your office.
Like you got your test for that second.
Oh, is it this number though?
Thank
But I think it's 147.
you. So that's fine.
147,000.
Like, I'll do
Yours.
that.
I just happened to be reading it.
Get into that same thing, did grab it home? What it seems like anymore. That's not go. I seen it cheap for sale down at the cheap lot for $100,000.
Yeah.
Why?
The house.
Why would you even buy?
loud.
Wakes me up every time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I don't want to get caught off guard.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Happening recording.
Something else in here.
No, I'm saying it's loud every time it comes on.
Oh, I said my name. Alex, it's meters.
You
So
too.
loud.
You too, Chris.
No, you never get to talk.
No. Same.
Like how you like sometimes, like
Yeah, that's fun.
raise your hand a little bit.
I joined the party. Party.
And you hear the whole voice, so it's like, you just speak.
I always get signed out, like I didn't leave the building and I got signed out. So we're still being like, you can't log in. Yeah, and then I have to ask them to get myself like multiple ways, yeah. Happened to me after lunch. Really good tea.
Yeah, they're like raw.
You what? Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, might be, yeah.
This being the store. Hopes for the upcoming year. Yeah. The coach, quarterback. When the first year, they were open to the public. I guess I went down for a game in Vegas. Stadium. Yeah, it's. Have you been there? I have not. It's on my bucket list. Beautiful. Tickets are not cheap.
Yeah, those are like the most expensive tickets in the NFL.
Yeah.
For Raiders?
Yeah. You look at it like.
Like,
you think they need
cheap
Vegas?
seats were, cheap seats were like $450, they're way up in the.
So you're keeping busy.
Look up more years. I'll be back.
So it's like, it's like,
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where they moved.
We're just waiting.
No,
Lauren to
I
get
know that.
back, but we are recording, so just so you know.
Everybody should be Raiders fans when I should say that.
Huh?
Everybody should be Raiders fans and it's just.
Well,
pronounced that.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, we have a Chiefs fan here too.
Well, I am also a Seahawks fan. And they picked up Pete Carroll, and I don't really care about Gino. And, but they also drafted Genty from BSU. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his.
You'll see a lot of Jetty, especially down in the Boise area. Just-
Yeah, oh yeah, because he was really popular.
Yeah.
We went to a game the day after Thanksgiving, the year before last, and we sat right next to Genty's family. Like, we didn't know that's who it was at first, and they were so much fun. That was like his first time he got to play after he came back from injury. And like, they drove all the way here from Houston, like a great big huge group of them. And they didn't even know if he was gonna get a play or not. Right.
Okay, the recording is on and we will come back in session. Just prior to leaving, we were looking at the pay scales, talking about a couple of other items, so. Lauren, maybe if we go to you, because we have 10 minutes here
Yes.
before we ready for the next meeting.
All right, so we appreciate the wage scales. We're gonna review those. And then also clarify and clean up, some items that you guys had concerns or questions on. And hopefully get you that emailed over to you this week in preparation for next week's meeting.
Yeah, and we did discuss amongst our group longevity pay. And if we were gonna consider it, it's something that we would want to do like a personnel policy, so it wouldn't be something that we would agree to today or in with this contract. And have to be vetted out further to determine whether the city even wants to do that or not, and we would wanna do things that benefit like all employee groups fairly, so. And then as far as like the definition for discipline and all of that, we feel like we have a really robust disciplinary process in the personnel policy. And we just think it would be better to follow the same processes and not complicate or make the process or even reason for discipline different. So we would prefer not to have any of that language in there.
Yeah, the longevity stemmed from the group agreeing to change the overtime calculation for the 40-hour work week and the substantial call out window. That was in order to give those up and the employees, to remove those from the contract, what can we replace that with? That would benefit them. So that's where the longevity is from.
Well, I'll give you a response to that. So, I will be visiting with council at a minimum about negotiations, and Nikki should be there too. And I can let them know that you asked and why you asked. Then if they would like to address it directly, with the union, they can, but I think that's fair. And tell them why for that, and then let them consider it. Yeah, beyond that, I don't want to comment, because yeah, but I mean, to support what Nikki said, you know, the part of the challenge would be that, you've heard. You've heard us say, and I certainly have said myself, is I try to look across the city and be as equitable as I can, that it will be groups. And then also any decision we make gets at the numbers is to be sustainable. That's not to say that somebody has to give something up. Be sustainable, we want to be fair to all, you know, concerned, but every little thing we do that has an impact, we just have to calculate it out, make sure that we're on a good trajectory moving forward. So that we don't get in a situation where everyone's saying. That sound good, Nikki? Yeah, I think it's reasonable to let them know that, AFSCME is saying, hey, okay, you've asked us to give this up, would you consider this? You know, because you didn't ask them that, I don't think.
And then did we wanna try to provide an updated red line copy to them before Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, we can like add in the boot allowance language, is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about, and any of the other.
The things that we have accepted,
Okay.
you proposed. Yeah, just so it's the most updated.
Did we want to get rid of the seniority? As, as is.
We probably will, cause when discussing it, I know when we were kind of reviewing items, it was brought up, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was a concern or question I thought from your guys' side, so that's why it was in there to make sure we didn't forget to address it if that was something that we needed to address, but we've quickly reviewed it, and I believe that was something that will probably come off the table from our side.
Is there still a question, Leah, though, of what happened if they leave and come back?
We don't think that was the union's question. We think that was management's question. If there's an application problem in terms of the current language, we're happy to modify that so that it's easy for payroll or for sources to interpret it or apply. But
Well, I think that's,
Yeah, I mean, it was
think
our,
that's what we've clearly said, is that from
Yeah.
our standpoint, we don't feel like these, if someone leaves and they come back.
so like, if you could tell us what the specific application is, we could propose modified language that answers or addresses.
I thought we
I mean, yeah, I guess,
discussed it.
you know, if you have someone at the water plant that leaves, they're gone for a year and a half, come back and get rehired. How do they fit into seniority? Cause it's not addressed at all.
But if they voluntarily leave, then usually I see it in most cases, if it's voluntary.
But does it say that?
So, yeah.
But
I
that's
understand what you're
well, then we'll have
saying,
to-
say rehire.
So, I mean, that kind of goes into these
Yeah.
conversations of like, you come up with something, but it's not written there. And we're just asking that in those scenarios, it's your thing. But we just want to know what to do in the event, because the contract isn't clear about it.
I don't have a copy. in front
That
of me.
was
Is it
just
at
a
conflict?
Clarifying question.
We'll come back, we'll come back.
So
Is it in conflict as a? Personnel policy?
Well, the personnel only talks about it in terms of, I think, like rules,
yeah,
like where you stand when you come back for rules. Not
Well-
necessarily how you guys use it for like bidding for vacation and stuff like that.
or like if there
We
were.
won't take it off the table.
Okay.
Were there other proposed and defined seniority with city for vacation accrual in a department seniority for shift bids? That's
I mean, I think,
Yeah, and that was how I put it on there, cause I know I had it in my notes that we had a discussion on senior to look into that, so that's why it was put in there that way. Cause I didn't want us to forget to go back and adjust it if it needed adjusted.
Well, because we had made many proposals to you, red lines, and I haven't really heard back anything on those, including, I think we added language.
well, we did add seniority language, an employee from employment and is subsequently rehired shall have their seniority calculated for their most recent hire. So I mean, if you guys are with that,
That
We
was
put
that,
that in there. we
that was
didn't-
that language we were.
Yeah,
We can go with that.
and we haven't received any response on about those sections that are just duplicate of the personnel policy. So their needs repetitive. I mean, you're talking about things like leave, family medical leave, those are,
I think we already agreed to that.
yeah, I
well,
don't
we
know.
weren't sure.
We agree.
We
with
are
some of
okay with the FMLA, the military, we don't wanna do bereavement, sick leave, or those articles, but the other ones we were okay with.
Interesting, okay. Well, we'll let our group consider that.
Nikki, where are we at on Article 6?
What article is that?
Grievances.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's something we proposed as well, that we haven't heard.
Well, basically, if it wasn't on mine, we want it as is in the contract, current contract language. We do not want grievances to mayor. We would like to continue those two at arbitration. Our opinion is if a grievance with one side, the city is being controlled by at the final end, how is that fair? That a neutral party is not coming in at grievance, if it's over an interpretation of a contract, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it would, I mean, from my standpoint, it would be nice to hear back things like that, because that wasn't what was communicated, and I think I assumed then that they were not further discussed because it wasn't necessary. So those things weren't included and haven't been talked about, so I think that'll be something for our group to have to discuss as well.
Policies, did you say we're okay staying? Or okay?
Patients,
We'll respond with our red line.
I'll
Like, we wanted
respond.
to have it in the minutes.
FMLA,
FMLA and military leave and one other one, I thought you said we're okay to come out. Workers' comp.
Bereavement, sick, and vacation leave were not okay, and they wanted to continue this.
Yeah, it's, yeah, I was looking for the. Okay, taken out.
But I will go through and give a little synopsis of where we are at with each article in with the full red line.
Yeah, I mean, I would just speak personally, I'm not going to be supportive of arbitration mediation. So, that's what I would be telling council, so.
Would you mind a reason why you're not in support of that?
Sure, no, I would support a personnel policy manual that we currently have in place, and I think we've had a record of that. Now, I know that when we met with council in the work session, much that what I had made was, but why you have a union, we need a union, one of the comments was, we don't know what the next mayor. Well, you don't know what the next council's gonna be. And council has all the power. They really. Council's one that's gonna approve this contract or not, even if there's something in it, don't like them, they will approve. So, I think I believe looking at the current policy amendment, if that needs to be updated, strengthened like that, bring some suggestions for that. If you say, well, subject to that, here's what we'd like to see in there. And then they pop that in personnel policy manual, but as a policy or as a practice or arbitration, I'm not gonna support that. Then I think in some of the employment decisions that have been made over the last year and a half, some of you sitting here have been involved with. It's been handled there, and that's the process, so, and changes going for some here, you could get somebody else in here that maybe tries to take it. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's a free shot either, you know, we've heard that, doesn't mean you can just go willy-nilly, you know, there's a process to. But I just want to tell you that, it coming from it, when I visit with the council, so.
I can tell you the general pitch for why we like arbitration in our contract. It's generally more cost efficient and as opposed to litigation. So if there's not a mechanism for arbitration, you open yourself up to litigation from employment matters like it is in the personnel rules before they go through that administrative process in the union contract. So oftentimes things are negotiated through mediation or arbitration at a lower level before they get and then you basically kind of deprive yourself of that kind of intermediate step. And most of the contracts that the city enters into, because I had a chance to kind of look on your website, usually a mediation provision and then go to court under the laws of Idaho, the county of Nesper. So that is what happens in the absence of a grievance process that goes arbitration is it just basically means this path is litigation. If somebody's got an issue, the application policy or the union contract is an individual of the city. So just understanding that that's kind of the opposite side from a policy standpoint of why I consider keeping that in there. Because it does just provide a basis that everybody understands what the rules are and it is just cheaper and more efficient. I understand your concern. We appreciate the city's position.
Yeah, well, again, doesn't mean Mayor gets what he wants, but, that's gonna be my initial take on it. Council can ask questions and they may have their own thoughts on it, but I appreciate that.
Question. So is the police and fire union have arbitration or?
Is that really substantive to this today?
We're talking, we've used it,
You can look at those contracts and see whether or not they're currently in there.
yes, that's just not something you close. I can look at it, but
I mean, it's in there, but whether or not it stays in there, that, again, that's every contract should be a contract.
Okay, so it does, thank you, that answers my question.
It's not like that for the non-represented employees. It's what's in the personnel.
Right, no, I'm just saying we wanna make everything fair. You know, so my point,
Yeah, and the city is required to bargain with the fire union, but we're not required to bargain with this union or the police union, so it's kind of as a courtesy.
we're aware of that.
So there's different things that are required by state law with some unions that aren't required through state law
Correct.
for like this union.
But because this is a public meeting, you know, I think one of the things in terms of trying to keep the bargaining relationship we've had in Lewiston for, you know, a long time is, you know, we want the city to be able to attract and retain quality workers and to keep them here so they can kind of continue to operate the infrastructure. It's difficult with the geographic proximity to, you know, Clarkston. There's a lot of economic activity here and the median, you know, wage of May of 2024, according to the census, is, you know, I think they were at the 28.04 an hour. At Costco that just increased its wages, we can provide a copy of that scale to the city as well. Average pay is down 31 an hour. And for just truck driver positions that do deliveries, they're making $35 or $36 an hour. That's the other major employer that's in this area. So we understand, like, you know, looking at other Idaho comparables, but like looking at other jobs in this area that are performing similar work, whether it's construction or those types of things, or CDL, people after their CDL school are sometimes starting out at rates of pay that are higher than the top end of some of our scales. Appreciate the budget constraints the city has, they need to be conservative and all those things. But at the same time, we just want to make sure that we're in a bargain in the market so that you can have good workers who stay here. We think that that is and we think the city is a good place to work, and we want to make sure that it stays good. So.
That's well stated, I like that. I just want to tell you, I'm gonna put a card on the table here for my personal thoughts on. So that I don't blindside by that, so, you know, we'll have the discussions, we'll go through it, but, I appreciate your comment. Thank you, Albert. Yeah, well, if, Laura, do you have anything else?
Nope. You not have
For the
anything
day,
more?
Brian, Pat? No, sir. Morgan?
No. I gotta stop.
Thank you.
Meeting
Okay,
adjourned?
We'll adjourn the meeting, there were 2:37, thank you, meeting.